All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. It is a little after 5:30, November 14th, 2023. Yolanda, can we get a roll call, please?
Mr. Romero?
Here.
Ms. Shaw?
Here.
Ms. Ekstrom?
Here.
Ms. Luna Rose?
Here.
All right, so next up we have our land acknowledgement statement. Do we have Yesenia Cordova? Is she on Zoom, Jean? Or she's here? Okay. So if we can have Yesenia Cordova come. Oh, Yesenia? Yesenia Cordova. Come on up to the podium. She is a 12th grade. She is a senior at Choya High School. She's a registered member of the Tohono O'odham Nation and is also part of the Pasco Yaqui. She is 18 years young and is a senior at Choya High School. Yesenia was accepted into the University of Arizona College of Medicine, where she plans to attend the fall of 2024 semester to begin her higher education journey. She has been employed part-time at Lucky Wishbone since her sophomore year and is a member of the Choya mariachi group, Mariachi Los Partidos, where she plays the violin. She feels honored to be here tonight to welcome you on the land of her ancestors, and we're honored to have you here today. Go ahead.
On behalf of the Governing Board of the Tucson Unified School District, I, Yesenia Cordova, acknowledge that the schools, buildings, and facilities of the Tucson Unified School District reside on the ancestral homeland of the Tohono O'odham Nation and the federally recognized tribal land of the Pascua Yaqui tribe.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next up for our Pledge of Allegiance, do we have Ari Begay? Okay, I see you on Zoom. Grade 5 at Miles Exploratory Learning Center. Interests include, Ari is a proud member of the Navajo Nation. Her clans are born into the Tangle people, born for Near Mountain. Maternal clan is Under His Cover, and paternal clan is Red Bottom. Ari enjoys reading books like Tea Dragon Society and other graphic novels. Ari is active Girl Scout in Troop 789 and runs cross country for her school. Ari loves working on math problems. Ari's favorite place to be is with family. If I get everybody to please stand up.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance with your right hand over your heart. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ari. Next up, agenda adjustments. Do we have any agenda adjustments, Dr. Trujillo?
Yes, Governing Board Clerk Romero, members of the Governing Board. We're very excited tonight to welcome County Attorney Conover here this evening to speak to item 6.1. So we would like item 6.1 moved up to follow the call to the audience.
Do we have any? No, we'll go ahead and do that. And before we move on, I just wanted to take a quick moment. This last weekend, we celebrated Veterans Day. And I just wanted to reach out to our audience. If we have any veterans in our audience, if you would please stand, I would love to honor and celebrate you. And all those that are out there listening to us, we appreciate your service to our country, and God bless. Thank you. All right. Superintendent's report.
Yes, Governing Board members and members of the Tucson Unified Community. We're excited to kick off November, our first regular meeting here in November. And as always, it is my pleasure to highlight the community about student and staff excellence. And we'll go ahead and begin with my recent visit to Dodge Middle School. Dodge, of course, one of the newest A-rated schools in the district, one of 2 middle schools now carrying the grade of an A. Had a wonderful visit out there, had an opportunity to meet some amazing students and some amazing staff members. I want to highlight a young lady by the name of Jimena Taub, who is absolutely wonderful, plays volleyball, plays soccer, plays flag football, serves on the student council, and has big dreams to go to University High School. So I was able to present her with the Superintendent Staff Excellence Award and some tickets, which ended up being kind of the game of the year, to go see the U of A take down UCLA. So that turned out to be a wonderful treat. As well as Marisol Karn, 7th grade social studies teacher, a great example of a lot of the amazing teachers here in the Tucson Unified School District. A teacher that goes well above and beyond her normal daily duties of teaching to mentor kids and serve as a student government sponsor, spends a lot of hours coordinating fundraisers so that their student government can go to the yearly trip to Washington, D.C. I likewise had an opportunity to present her with tickets to go see the University of Arizona against UCLA. So I want to congratulate the Dodge community, Principal Menegan, Principal Brenda Menegan, for their amazing success and their A rating. On October 1st, I had an opportunity to go to the TUSD Marching Band Expo. I want to thank Governing Board member Luna Rose, who was also there cheering on TUSD bands, kind of a dual role as a parent as well as a TUSD band advocate, cheering on all of the wonderful bands that we saw there that evening. I want to thank Paolo Verdi for hosting us. The grounds were absolutely amazing. And I want to thank all of the participating bands. Palo Verde, Saguaro, Choya, Sabino, Tucson High, Rincon University. It was a spectacular display of talent, hard work, dedication, and commitment. We were treated to an absolutely beautiful show. And of course, the Marching Band Exhibition is an excellent example of the outstanding commitment to the arts that we maintain here in the Tucson Unified School District. And it is these students and their parents that make the arts come alive. Their parents that get up early Saturday mornings, early Friday mornings, bring their kids in early for rehearsals, and of course, bring them to and from competitions crisscrossing Pima County and sometimes outside of Pima County to support their students in their events and their competitions. So I want to congratulate all of the wonderful performers that supported that event. Saturday, November 4th, we had a very, very special event for the, before we get there, I'm just skipping over. I did have an opportunity to go to Safford, if we want to go to the next slide, where I was able to serve as a guest speaker at a U.S. citizenship and naturalization ceremony. Absolute highlight of my year. Had a wonderful opportunity to address 57 brand new Americans, and many of them parents to TUSD kids. I want to thank Diane Dean, social studies teacher at Safford K-8, for serving as our liaison to USCIS. That's the United States Citizen, USCIS. That's our Immigration and Citizenship Services. They coordinate the naturalization process for newly arrived immigrants. It was a joy to meet so many wonderful community members coming out to support our newest Americans and to see everybody so excited to take the oath of citizenship here to the United States. And it was a magical event, and I'm hoping to serve again in the spring, where we will welcome a new batch for a spring ceremony over there at Safford. So I do want to thank the Safford administration for hosting that wonderful event. And Saturday, November 4th, we had a wonderful welcoming of our international teachers at Howenstein Professional Development Center. I want to take a moment to highlight the wonderful achievement of our Human Resources Department to secure the services and the assignment of 55 international teachers, meeting the teacher shortage challenge head on by providing an amazing opportunity for teachers around the world to come and serve our kids. International teachers predominantly serve in exceptional education, math, and science classrooms. No surprise there. That's where our teacher shortage needs are most pronounced. And the majority of our international teachers join us from the beautiful islands of the Philippines and India. And our Human Resources Department was able to partner with the Curriculum and Instruction Division. They hosted an induction event on Saturday morning, November 4th. And it was an opportunity for our international teachers to learn more about the district, learn more about our curriculum, learn more about our instructional framework, and press the flesh, meet each other, and establish a new community of educators that they can lean on throughout this year. All of our international teachers will be assigned a mentor teacher here in the Tucson Unified School District. Mentor teachers are traditionally master teachers that have served for several years in the classroom and will help our newly arrived educators adjust to day-to-day life in TUSD schools. And as always, I want to take the opportunity to highlight some staff excellence. Let's meet Edgardo Soto. He is the custodian at Seacrest Middle School. He has dedicated 37 years of his career and his life to shaping brighter hallways and tidier spaces at Seacrest Middle School. If you haven't seen his story, check out our social media platforms, Instagram or Facebook, to learn more about what Edgar does for the Seacrest community. But let us celebrate his 37 years of service to Seacrest and, of course, to the Tucson Unified School District. And continuing on with celebrating some staff dedication and success, I also want to highlight Mr. Francisco Harris. He serves proudly as one of the team of monitors at Doolin Middle School. He plays a vital role in fostering a nurturing community within the school. He finds joy in his daily interactions with students and watching them on a daily basis become better human beings. He also loves the staff that he works with and the family atmosphere at Doolin. You can see Francisco at just about every single school event. He loves Doolin above and beyond his duties as monitor, loves going to see the students perform, whether it's performing arts or to see them compete on the playing fields or on the courts with one of the many of the school's athletic programs. You want to learn more about Francisco? Check out our social media platforms. Hear more, learn more about his story, Instagram or Facebook. And in a sad moment tonight, we want to take a moment to remember a TUSD legend. And tonight, we extend our condolences, our prayers, and our best wishes, and our happiest memories of a TUSD legend that recently passed on, David Logan Giese. Upon completion of his service to our country in the defense of South Korea in the Korean War, David began teaching in Pennsylvania. Then he moved to Arizona, where he began a 48-year career as an educator in the Tucson Unified School District. Mr. Giese was a teacher at Brickta, principal at Roosevelt, White, VC, and Tolson. After his retirement, he returned to serve as the interim director of Native American Studies. Roxanne Begay James, our current director of the Native American Student Services Department, said, Mr. Giese was such an incredible leader and a nice man, the kind of person who always put students first. Services for Mr. Giese will be held on Saturday, November 25th, 10:30 a.m., the beautiful Savior Lutheran Church. In lieu of flowers, donations may be made to Youth on Their Own or Make Way for Books in Tucson. As I've always said, what makes the Tucson Unified School District amazing is not necessarily the programs, it's the people. And it's not just the people who serve us currently, it's the legends that served us previously, of which the Tucson Unified legacy continues to grow. And Mr. Giese, he is an important part of that legacy. So I would like to ask all of us now to observe a moment of silence for this amazing educator who left us too soon. Thank you. And if we have any family members of Mr. Giese with us this evening, I would like to invite you to step to the podium to say a few words.
Board superintendent and all that are, okay. My name is Cynthia and I am Mr. Giesi's youngest daughter. And I, on behalf of my mother, we all want to thank you very much for recognizing him today. Not only is my father, does have some many stories that he used to enjoy telling. I remember the days going and unloading all the books with him in the summertime to get the classes ready. But I also want to let you all know the impact that TUSD has done. When my father in October was hospitalized at Northwest, one of the x-ray techs brought him back to his room and said, "That was my principal. That's Mr. Giesi." I am from the Phoenix area, and a receptionist at a medical facility up there just informed me that she remembered Mr. Giesi and her teacher. And the one thing that she remembered is that he was very untraditional with his ties. It was always elementary, like Snoopy ties and fun and, enjoyable ties. One of the students that we ran into said that if you got in trouble, you had lunch in his office with him. As he did his paperwork, you ate lunch. You didn't get to play. His life was to mold children. And I want to thank you once again on behalf of my family for recognizing him today. And he did definitely impact a lot of students and kids then and in today's careers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Governing Board Clerk Romero, that concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Trio. Now we have the call to the audience. Public participation at board meetings. Members of the public may speak during the call to the audience. The governing board clerk shall be responsible for recognizing speakers and maintaining order where it may be appropriate. Those who speak in person or want to have their comments read shall email or call the board office to complete a request to address the board form before the meeting. Speakers who have not completed a request form are not permitted to address the board. The speaker must state their full name and topic prior to addressing the board. Speakers are encouraged to be brief with a maximum time of 3 minutes. While more than one speaker may speak together in the time allowed, speakers are reminded they are not allowed to speak more than once, and they may not transfer or delegate their time to others. If there are documents for the board, please give them to our board office staff, and they will ensure each board member receives a copy. Those attending the meeting and are speaking before the board shall observe rules of good conduct. Speakers should also refrain from inappropriate or slanderous remarks, and because TUSD serves students from preschool through high school, speakers should be aware that there may be children present and listening. At the end of the call to the audience, the governing board president will ask if any board member wishes to respond to criticism, wish to have staff review a matter, or wish to ask a matter to be put on a future agenda. No more than 2 members may address each topic. Contents of this card are public information. And our first is Raymond Adams, followed by Kelly Simmons.
Thank you, Mr. Romero. Yes, my name is Raymond Adams. My topic is needing assistance to help my 6th grade son's safety, life, and education. We have been going through, we have had a really rough road for the last 2 years, my son and all of our kids who are of color. Starting at Carrillo Elementary, coming to school every day, being called an N-word, even having being called, "Why don't you go back to Africa?" And on top of that, one day my son, a student came up to my son, told him he was going to kill him. But before he killed him, he was going to have his family killed in front of him by his family and his gang, the Crips. And then he was going to kill my son. That student was suspended and got in trouble. 3 days later, 2 of his friends assaulted my son violently on the playground, almost put him in the hospital. And according to the attending physician, if the attack had occurred on the basketball court or someplace that was hard, he would have been in the hospital or worse. Otherwise, fortunately, he was on wood chips, which protected him. But they literally called it that they stomped on him. He grabbed from behind, threw him up in the air, pulled him on the ground, on his head, on his neck, and continued to stomp on him. Okay. We put orders of protection, trying to request that, because the 2 kids that assaulted him were in his classroom. We asked that they be moved. We got orders of protection. They did nothing. TUSD did not do that. They allowed the students to be in the classroom. We really are looking to try to get changes to the policies to allow things of that kind of violence, to allow that whoever is evaluating that to say, yes, those students should be moved so that that the students aren't victimized again and again and again. There's many things that we would like to go over, that there needs to be policy changes. That's why we're presenting to the board, and really would like to be speaking to you, Dr. Trujillo. This is just the beginning of a very, very big iceberg of problems about racism, hate, violence, and attacks. Over this year, my son was on a bus. A kid got on the bus, pulled out a gun, pointed it at him, and pulled the trigger. Dodge went into lockdown briefly. Then that kid was allowed back in school. 2 days after the kid was allowed back in school, on my son's birthday, another kid assaulted my son, throwing him to the ground, causing another concussion. And Kelly, his mom, is on the phone with the kid threatening.
Thank you. Kelly Simmons, followed by Imatu Alasan.
Yes, I'm Kelly Simmons. So I'll pick up where he left off. And so my son called me when the little boy pushed him down and he hit the back of his head. And he called me immediately. And during this time, the young man was hollering at him, calling him the N-word, and told him he would have the boy with a gun. And it did end up being like a pellet gun, but it was a gun. End up telling him that he would have that boy shoot him. And so it's just been one issue after another in terms of racism at TUSD. I've never seen anything like it before. I'm from Chicago. I'm an African-American woman. I've never heard of this. I was so shocked and surprised. I didn't know in 2023 this is what we were doing. You know, especially here in Tucson, I had some really great experiences as a home health care nurse. I've been all over Tucson. Everybody's been great. And then this is what my son goes through, which is extremely emotional. But the thing is that now the victim becomes victimized. You know, now it's a thing of making him look bad. You know, now these kids are working I had to take him out of Dodge. I had to pull him. So now I'm homeschooling him because these children bait him into conversation. He had a fight. They baited him into a conversation, and this was text messages. So they take the text messages of what my son said and send it to the principal. It's always this thing of trying to get him in trouble. More than one kid saying he's doing this, doing that. So I say, you know what? At this point, I have to pull him. It's nothing else I could do. And I just couldn't even and then after I told them, I said, well, you know what? I am going to take him out. So that was October 6th. October 8th, I received an email saying that his lottery placement was declined. And so I didn't know what they were talking about. And I called a number, and the person told me, oh, well, she didn't understand what that meant, but she was like, oh, I think he lost his place at Dodge. So, I mean, to completely, and that's the only thing I've heard from anybody at Dodge Traditional Middle School. I haven't heard anything from anyone, and it's other than to tell him his spot is gone. So that's something must be done. It has to be policy changes. And back to what he said with the little boys who picked him up and stomped him and everything. In that classroom, the boys are sitting behind him. That's not a good environment for learning. If you got these kids that victimized you sitting behind you. And so the only response, and I get the policy, but the only response was to sit them across from him, like on his side. So that's what we've been going through.
Thank you. And I guess Matsu Allison, Conta LeBlanc.
Hello, my name is Ismatu Allison Conte LeBlanc. My topic is dual language preschool. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Gabriel Trujillo and the members of the governing board for allowing me to speak today. I have a bachelor's degree from Skidmore College in African American History, a master's degree in church development from Alliance Theological Seminary, a certificate in diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace from the University of South Florida, but most importantly, I'm a proud mother of 4 children, 2 of which are top students in Hollinger's GATE bilingual program. I am here to move that the governing board approve a full-day dual language preschool option for families for the 2024-2025 school year. Dual language is a part of my family's core values. My youngest child, Noah, is 2 years old. She's excited to attend a TUSD preschool in the 2024-2025 school year. Currently, my husband, my eldest daughters, and I speak to her in English and Spanish at home so that she can become bilingual. When she attends school in the fall, I truly do desire for her to begin her formal academic career in the best way possible by attending a public dual language preschool within the TUSD district. Bilingual education is especially important in Arizona, particularly among our youngest population. In Arizona, Spanish is most popular language spoken other than English. According to Acturian, 20% of Arizonans speak Spanish. The US Census states that 30,000 children under the age of 5 in Tucson. A dual language preschool is in line with the TUSD's Equity, Diversity, and Inclusiveness Department's vision, which states, "We will model, advocate, support, and develop integrative systems of programs and practices to ensure equitable learning opportunities in school systems of care and support in which every TUSD student experiences a world-class education and succeeds." Currently, schools like Bloom, Grijalva, McCorkle, White, Mission View, and Van Bisquick offer dual language as well as inclusive preschool. There are private dual language preschools available in Tucson. However, attending a private dual language preschool would come at too high a cost to parents, which would mean that it would not be equitable for economically disadvantaged students. A free, public, dual language preschool is another option to provide equitable learning opportunities for our youngest academic population. I move to request that the TUSD district open a full-day preschool language program for the 2024-2025 school year. This is a world-class education opportunity that will bridge the gap between early childhood education, elementary school for preschoolers that are native Spanish speakers, as well as English speakers. This will allow us to be bilateral, bilingual, and multicultural within the 21st century. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thelma Dade, followed by Annabelle Close.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Thelma Dade. I'm the mother of Kelly Simmons that was up here, and it's just dealing with DeMario. The same situation, his problem at home, how he suffers. Right, it's it. Okay, thank you. How he has a problem at home even dealing with this. And I think something really needs to be done considering that there is true racism. It actually exists. A lot of people like to think it doesn't. It does. And he suffers from it, and his brothers, and I got other family there that are black that are also in school. So it's a real problem. It really needs to be dealt with instead of covered up. A text message came in to my daughter, and it was obviously a setup because they put him on the phone and started asking him questions. And the principal, sent her a text, which anybody reading it could see it was a setup, and then it was responded to in such a way like it's his fault. Well, if you look at the text message, it was a setup. So my thing is that because children do suffer with this, and they suffer with racism, something seriously needs to be done instead of pretty much covered up. Well, this wasn't meant, that wasn't meant. It was, they know what they're saying. Why do black people wear their hair like that? It's ugly, those type of comments. So these are children. So I think that they can be trained like they've been trained in other areas to be respectful, treat people human, be decent, even if you get it from your home. Talk, work with it and try to help do something about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Annabelle Close, followed by Jerry Schuster.
Good evening, Board. My name is Annabelle Close. I'm a senior in high school and a member of the Arizona Youth Climate Coalition. First, I wanted to say congratulations on the passing of Prop 496. This is a monumentous achievement in improving the learning environments of all TUSD schools. Our government has been failing our education system, leaving our public schools and teachers behind. But I hope the passing of this bond is starting a trend for the better. The bond can do a lot of great things. It can make TUSD schools safer and more secure, improving our learning spaces, but it can also help secure a future for its students. Nowadays, growing up is especially difficult. It is hard to embrace the freedom of youth when confronted with collapsing ecosystems, unbearable heat waves, and a worsening water crisis. It is hard to be a kid when confronted with the truth of climate change. I haven't felt like a kid in a long time. How can I be when I am constantly confronted with the destruction of this beautiful world I know? We have been forced to grow up, forced to take care of a problem others of a different generation started long ago, before we can even vote or run for school board. But how can we ignore it when our entire futures are in jeopardy, when the world around us is dying? There is nowhere that has more investment in a child's future than a school. I learned about climate change for the first time in school. It was also the first place where I dreamt about my future, where I was told of all the aspirations I could have, everything I could be. Well, I know a lot more about climate change now, and my dreams are only bigger. So that is why I'm asking you all now to become a leader in climate resiliency for the city of Tucson, to show your students and the youth of this city that you care, that you will help take care of things and let them be kids again. We implore you to work with us to develop a new climate resolution, to improve the energy efficiency of TUSD facilities, to electrify the bus fleet, and update heating and cooling to be climate friendly. You see, no child should have to say this. No child should have to try and convince adults that we matter, that the future of this earth matters. We shouldn't have to grow up so fast. We need you to help us secure our future, but the clock is ticking, time is running out, and there has never been a better time for change. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Jerry Schuster, followed by Jasmine.
Good evening, governing board members, Dr. Trujillo, Councilor Ross, and staff. Once again, thank you for this opportunity to speak before you. My name is Jerry Schuster. I'm a substitute teacher with TUSD. And tonight I want to talk about the possibility of having forums or town hall meetings regarding the proposition that passed, Prop 496. Obviously, we're all elated that it passed. We can do a lot of great things that we would not otherwise be able to do. But my suggestion is that over time, as the proposition is implemented, as the expenditures are done, that we have a series of town hall meetings, forums, both on the district level and on the site level. Because obviously with something this monumental, as it progresses, there will inevitably have to be adjustments made as we progress. And what I'm thinking about having such meetings, again, on the district level forums, on the site level, possibly site council meetings or forums done at each site, is that it would give an opportunity to get feedback from the TUSD community, particularly parents and students, among others, who will certainly be impacted by this. And also that that parents and students and all of the interested parties will have a better idea of exactly how this will affect them. Like, for example, as the technology in the classrooms is improved, parents and students are going to want to know, okay, well, in what specific ways is it going to change how we learn, how we're taught, how we're going to how our education is going to improve. So that's why I'm saying, as we progress along, I would like to see a series of town hall meetings, forums, again, on the district level as well as on the site level. Now, of course, there's certainly worth saying that that the people involved in putting the whole proposition together, as well as the expenditure package, obviously did an exemplary job, as you can see on the website, because it's very well spelled out what the expenditures are, not only overall in the district, but site by site. So all the many people in the district that had a hand in it, and there were many, did an exemplary job. They obviously did their homework. But as it progresses, I'm thinking these interactive meetings between the district officials, district personnel, parents, and students will facilitate feedback as everything progresses, as well as giving parents and students more of an insight as to exactly how all this welcome windfall of nearly $500 million is going to improve them. It's kind of how it's going to affect them. And once again, thank you very much for your time, and have a good evening.
Thank you. Jasmine, and then followed by Janice Taylor.
Hello. I really don't have anything that I wrote. I really just wanted to talk about the bullying, just because me and my son had just moved back out here and he's experiencing tons of bullies. Since I'm now seeing that that is just an issue within Arizona, I wanted to really just get up here and just say that what are we doing exactly when it comes to being kind and just kind of the old teachings that we were doing back in the day. You guys have a $7 million budget or $7 million fund, and I wanted to know exactly why we are cutting some of that fund when it's to minority kids. It almost seems like you're trying to slash your funding when it comes to minority kids getting the funding that they need, trying to get them an adequate educational service academics going on. So that's just kind of like, and also too, we are the 49th state with low ranking in the whole country of the United States. So that's what's even more intriguing. And also too, 40% of that funding is property tax with 12% federal funding, and then the top 5% with the highest revenue for educational purposes. So what exactly is that $7 million going to? And especially when you start looking at it, 33% of it is dropouts for minority kids. So it almost seems like you're trying to slash our funds to put toward private schooling, because private schooling is at $10,000 average tuition. So that's literally what it seems like our funding, our money is going toward, is to cover their cost, while our kids are just dropping out. And also, too, nothing about bullying is being done. My child is biracial. I'm a Black single mom, and it seems like nothing is being done at all. Like, literally, every single day my kid goes to school, he gets bullied. And if I'm telling him to speak up for himself, it literally seems like even then the teachers are really starting to pick on my student, on my kid. And it's just not him. It's literally any minority kid. So what exactly do you plan on doing besides cutting budgets? That's my general question. It almost seems like you guys just want to continue to do that, because I have the statistics right here and it just seems like it's dropping. However, though, you have a 41.8% college education rate, and that is, you wouldn't guess, nothing but white people, just Caucasian, excuse me, but it is true. So what happens moving forward to the Good Faith Act when it comes to Black or minority kids? Just curious, what happens to their education and academics? That's all.
Thank you. Janice Taylor, followed by Robert Warnock. Do we have, no, Janice Taylor? Okay. Robert Warnock.
Good evening. My name is Robert Warnock, or Robert Brandon Warnock, and I was hoping to get information about a abandoned school under the name of Charles A. Carson Middle School at 7777 East Stella Road in Tucson, Arizona 85730. I would just like more information on what's going on with that specific property and its, let's say, real estate status and possible purchase. Thank you.
Thank you. Kyrie Copeland, followed by Sterling Early. All right, no Kyrie Copeland. Sterling Early. All right, Yolanda, I think you had that one you could read.
Greetings, School Board President Shaw and board members. The purpose of this email letter is to bring awareness to the board of violations of the consensus agreement and TUSD school board policies and procedures by Ms. Desire Wheeler, Director of Interscholastics, with support from Brian Lambert, Assistant Superintendent of TUSD, during discipline procedures. My concerns are as follows. TUSD management level employees, Ms. Wheeler, Mr. Lambert, have disregarded policies formed by the TUSD governing board while holding subordinate Sterling Early to these district rule regulations, policies, and procedures. Violations of Article 6.3, TEA Guide to Progressive Discipline, Article 13.2, Consensus 3.12, AC-R, Article 2, 2B, Discrimination, CCD, Article 14-5, Article 15-5, and Article 6-5, to name a few, include disregard to due process, unfair treatment, harassment, hostile work environment, lack of confidentiality, disregard of progressive discipline, incorrect usage of forms, failure to adhere to grievance timelines, freedom of speech, responding to grievances, intimidation, retaliation. I thank you in advance for your consideration in investigating the above TUSD policy and procedures violations by Ms. Wheeler and reviewing solutions and resolutions so that I and other employees do not receive the same unfair treatment in the future. I look forward to resolving this matter and await your response. I will be providing an email to the board outlining additional detailed information following the board meeting tonight in the week to come. Respectfully submitted, Sterling S. Early.
And I believe you had one more to read?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good evening to all in TUSD. My name is Guadalupe Henninger. I would like to speak about item 6.2. I was happy that TUSD bonds passed. We had a GOP-led legislation since 2009 who time and time again refused to invest in we the people. They refused to fully fund education, putting money instead into for-profits companies. It creates waste. The state constitution demands that the GOP-led legislation to fund 2/3 to almost free higher education. So all our high school students have an opportunity to attend higher education. But for more than a decade, they have been cutting taxes for their corporate donors and special interest groups for funding their campaigning as a big blow to the state budget. That leaves no money for we the people and to fully fund our education. Our education system being dismantled and disrupted by the Arizona GOP-led legislation, our Arizona State Superintendent, their special interest group, and corporated donors. At the national level, we have GOP-led House of Representatives who refuse to do the job to fund the government. They need to fund and invest on education, child care, clean air, clean water, health care. Call them to tell them to abide by the oath they took to abide by the Constitution. Guadalupe Henninger.
Thank you, and this concludes the call to the audience. At this time, I ask if any board members wish to respond to criticism, wish to ask staff to review a matter, or wish to ask that a matter be put on a future agenda. And remember, no more than 2 members may address each topic. Board members? Ms. Luna Rose?
Thank you, and thank you for coming this evening, everybody. Always appreciate your comments. I wanted to, and I know my other colleagues are going to probably the same thing, just in terms of the bullying that we've heard about this evening. It is not acceptable in TUSD, and as a parent, and an alumni of this district. It's disappointing, so I'm hoping we can come to a resolution on those items. But I did want to make a point to our student that came this evening. It's Annabelle. Thank you for coming. It's such we don't get students coming very often, and this is your district, and I'm a big proponent of students coming to talk about what's going on in their schools, because you really are the boots on the ground besides our staff, and we're here for you, and I appreciate your comments and your comments about climate change, and hopefully they would like to follow up with you on that. And Ismatu, did I pronounce your name correctly? Thank you. Thank you. Really appreciated your comments about the dual language preschool. I don't think it's, I'm not sure if we can do it for the 24-25 school year, but I'd be interested, and maybe, that's something that Dr. Trujillo and the curriculum staff can look into in terms of, is this a possibility for the future? I really appreciate your forward thinking on that. And I'll pass it on to my other colleagues. Thank you.
Misha?
Thank you, Mr. Romero, and thank you to everyone who came to speak with us tonight. First, I would like to offer my sincere apologies to Mr. Raymond, Ms. Kelly, and Ms. Thelma for the treatment that your son has faced throughout the years at our district. I would like to ask staff to give us a full report of all the incidents that occurred at both Dodge and Carrillo. And within that report, if we could please get more information about the mishandling of the orders of protection, how we typically handle those things, and why this child was not protected throughout the years. It's not okay that, students have to deal with bullying that follows them to another school. And then when you add racism on top of that, we just can't keep having this issue happen. It's been something I've seen far too much in my 3 years as a board member, and I know we just revamped the policy, but if it's not working, then we have to keep changing it so that it works. Ms. Ismatu, I love your idea for the pre-K dual language. If we can get a presentation on that, I'm not sure if it could happen in 24-25, but I think it's a fabulous idea, and I would like a public presentation on that. Miss Annabelle, thank you for speaking to us today. I would love to see a list of demands that your Youth Climate Coalition has. I think we can discuss that, and I'm interested in reviewing that. I'd like to ask staff to review the matter proposed by Mr. Jerry Schuster about the town halls, about our bond. And let's see. And thank you, Ms. Jasmine, also for coming to advocate for your son and the bullying that he is experiencing. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Ms. Ekstrom?
Thank you. Dr. Trujillo, I did meet with Ms. Simmons and Mr. Adams yesterday, so I would like to ask you to have a meeting with them as well. Thank you.
And just one thing on mine for our last read-in, Guadalupe Henninger. I know there's only so much we can do as a school board, and bringing in the state legislature and the U.S. legislature, all of us decided to do something and ran for an office. So that would be one recommendation. If there's something that you want to change, and you're dedicated to doing that, get out there and fight for what you believe. Again, this concludes the call to the audience, and I think we're going to move up 6.1, correct? All right, so 6.1, intergovernmental agreement between Pima County and Tucson Unified School District for firearm safety at TUSD schools.
Yes, President Shaw, Governing Board Clerk Romero, President Shaw in absentia, and members of the Governing Board. We're very, very excited about this item. We wanted to go ahead and move it up. We do have our esteemed guest from the county. I'd like to welcome County Attorney Laura Conover to the podium to talk about this very, very generous donation to the school district in the name of firearm safety for the families of the Tucson Unified School District. If there's any questions about the language of the agreement, we also have Mr. Ross and Mr. Aronoff, who are also fundamental in finalizing that language. County Attorney Conover, welcome to the Tucson Unified School District.
Thank you very, very much for having me here. Governing Board Clerk Romero, all governing board members, Superintendent Dr. Trujillo, and Attorney Ross. I'm humbled to be before you, and I confess that it's my first visit to a TUSD board meeting, and it shouldn't be the last, because we have such a shared core value in the safety of our children and the safety of our schools. And so I want to say very briefly that first and foremost, Governing Board Member Jennifer Ekstrom, I cannot thank you enough for your wisdom and your foresight to know that it wasn't enough to continue to pass each other on Saturdays at resource fairs where my office was handing out Narcan and gun locks for gun safety, that we could be more intentional about this. And that TUSD schools, TUSD families, and most especially our children could benefit from the simple, gentle availability of gun locks. With me tonight is an honor. Sophia Blue, our community outreach coordinator, answered that call, as you know, Governing Board Member Ekstrom. And then as anything legal, we must then endeavor into a long legal contract procedure. And that's why the civil law firm at the county attorney's office is so critical. And Bobby Yu is the chief of our business transactions unit. And that's how we produce, in conjunction with your attorney, Mr. Ross, a lawful intergovernmental agreement to achieve the goals that we all simply want to achieve. And I'll leave you with just one thought about how we hope this will work, how we hope that providing each TUSD school with 10 gun locks, just to begin with, how this actually works. When we are out, the people's office, as we like to call it, the Pima County Attorney's Office, when we are out on nights and weekends, as we were last year, handing out 18,463 gun locks. We don't hand them out like candy, if you will. We don't hand them out like a flyer. It only takes a minute, but a minute is so important to connect eye to eye and perhaps heart to heart with someone. And we say, if you know someone who could do better about protecting and locking up the firearm, who could do better about keeping that home safe, your loved one, your neighbor, your nephew, your sibling, then we want you to take the gun lock as a gift from us, and then you are going to gift it to them. And you're going to have a few moments of heart-to-heart conversation about how you need them to take that gun lock as a loved one to keep your home more safe. And that's how we believe we are all together helping to drive the homicide rate down. It's 30% down from 2 years ago, which is bucking trends in the state and the nation. And you all have been tremendous partners. And there's so much way to go. The road is long. And I cannot begin to thank you enough for this partnership. If there are no questions, I can bid you adieu.
Thank you. And to complement our esteemed county attorney's words, we do have a brief presentation of the details. I'd like to welcome our school safety director, Mr. Hallams, to kind of take us through how the locks will become available, the gun safety locks, the firearm safety locks will become available to the TUSD community, how families can go about getting them, and what we're going to do on a school-by-school basis. Mr. Hallams.
Yes, good evening, Clerk Romero, governing board members, Dr. Trujillo, and Council Ross. Appreciate the opportunity to come up here and follow the county attorney. It's a great opportunity that we have in the school district to do whatever we can to create a safer community. To her point, this is an intergovernmental agreement between the two entities, the county attorney's office and Tucson Unified School District. And also to her point, you know, we've seen some, over the last few years, we've seen some trends that were concerning, but now starting to improve, and we just want to continue to complement that. Pima County still, like she said, has a long way to go, and whatever we can do to help out the county attorney's office and local law enforcement in curbing some of this and providing education, we're absolutely on board and looking forward to partnering with them. So on July 11th, the Tucson Unified School Board, they adopted a resolution supporting secure storage for firearms. And they authorized the superintendent to work with local law enforcement, including the county attorney's office, to do what we need to do to educate the community and provide resources they can to ensure that the firearms that they do have within their households are as safe as possible. The goals of this, of course, are simple, right? We want to prevent accidental usage of weapon. We also want to ensure that we're not providing opportunities for additional suicide opportunities for our children and our families. And we want to, it also helps with deterrence of theft of those specific firearms, which we often see utilized in criminal behavior around the county. So for Tucson Unified School District, what we're going to do is we're going to happily accept those firearms from the county attorney's office, and we're going to distribute them utilizing my department, at least 10 school locks per campus at 87 campuses. That's about 870 locks that we'll initially distribute. With that will become any educational materials, and we'll post those. Those gun locks will be available at the front desk, not just, like she said, handing out candy, but they will be handed out to any family members, any adult who asks for them with no questions asked. Again, the county attorney is going to provide us those locks, and they're going to provide us those educational materials that we will have posted at the front desk of every TUSD school. So, and like I already talked about, my office will be kind of forefronting that. We will work closely with the county attorney's office in ensuring that those gun locks are distributed. And then we'll work with them as, hopefully if we can get more handed out, we will continue to coordinate with them to ensure that we have availability of those gun locks as they're needed. So, with that, again, I just want to thank the county attorney's office, thank the governing board for their leadership in providing this opportunity to our community, and I look forward to working with all of you to ensure that we can improve the safety of Pima County.
Thank you. Board members, any comments? This section?
Thank you, Mr. Romero. So the goal here was to be able to provide families with for a way to secure firearms. All too often, we see kids get access to their parents' firearms, and it's irreversible and it's deadly at some points, and we really want to change that. We want to make sure that those guns are locked and they don't get into the hands of our students. As I was running for this position, I met with Moms Demand Action, and hearing all those stories and just knowing that we could maybe change the course of one family's lives, and that's what makes this all worth it, to be able to provide one gun lock. So thank you so much to County Attorney Conover and to Sophia Blue, who took my idea and really made it move forward with the County Attorney's office. I am so grateful, and I really hope my colleagues support this.
Ms. Lynn Rose?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you, Ms. Conover, for coming. And you can come back anytime if you'd like. Open invitation. And Mr. Hallam, so my question is, with the gun locks, I don't know how to put one on. So would there be like a quick training manual with these things, or would somebody in the office of each school? I'm kind of curious on how that would work.
I think we have a sample here. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. And usually with those, if they're the same ones I've seen before, yeah, there are instructions on how to utilize. The benefit of this as well is it starts that conversation within. So I think while the lock is extremely beneficial to help secure that weapon, it also starts with the educational process, having families talk about gun safety and ensuring that they're know the whereabouts and knowing that they're locked up and they're not accessible to anybody that shouldn't have it. So the gun locks are great. The educational is equally as great as I think.
Okay. And I also want to thank my colleague, Ms. Ekstrom, for bringing this to us. My first year on the board, I brought forth to the board a gun, not necessarily a policy, but a statement that, we would, support and protect our students from any sort of gun violence. So I'm happy to see we've taken this next step. And I will be supporting it this evening.
Michelle?
Thank you. And likewise, thank you, Ms. Ekstrom, for bringing this forward to us. And thank you, Ms. Conover, for speaking with us tonight and being interested in collaborating with us. I have a couple questions. First, it's just kind of about the lock itself. So it has a key, right? Isn't there a key?
Yeah, I have a sample here. Would you guys like to see it? Okay.
Yes, please.
Cool. So my question with the key, because I know these have been given out, in various community events over the years. Is the key a universal key? And so if someone had another gun lock, could they access a gun that is locked with a gun lock with another lock?
I don't know how many copies of those individual keys they have. Obviously, there's not an infinite amount, so there'll maybe do some duplicates out there, but that would be pretty hard pressed to find a duplicate key. It's not like a universal key, so they should all be fairly different. But again, you're going to have X number of keys out there, so I guess if you tried them all, you might find a duplicate.
Okay, great. And then thank you for answering that. My second question is, are we doing any sort of follow-up or an incentive to actually place the gun lock on a gun? Because I know some people, they'll get a gun lock, but they'll just, it might be in that drawer where they put the dead batteries and stuff like that. And so can we develop some sort of incentive program where you take a snapshot of the lock on the gun and then I don't know, I'm just trying to think of how to really get the lock on the gun.
It's a great idea. I think the initial intent is just to get as many of these out there to people that want them as possible, understanding that may happen, right? They may utilize it to lock their shed. Who knows? But if somebody out there does use it to properly lock up a firearm and that prevents something, then I think all this work is worth it, even if it only happened once. So again, and I don't want to speak for them, but correct me if I'm wrong. It's the idea is just to get as many as out there as possible, and then hope that it helps deter, it helps provide some education at the same time. So again, it's just kind of that starting point.
Okay, great. Something to think about moving forward. And then my last question is to the county attorney's office. If we manage to distribute all of the gun locks that you are providing, is there room to receive more?
Yes, absolutely, Governing Board Member Shaw. I want to say 2.2, 2.2.1. Again, I'm so sorry, but we have to make legal contracts that are ridiculous to read. But I think that there's a provision right there in the contract that says that we would be most pleased to have that particular problem, right? That where a school exhausts their first 10 and we can provide more. And I really appreciate your earlier question, Member Shaw, and that's why I wanted to provide that example, is that I think that we achieve something, not nothing, but I think we achieve something in simply handing out the gun locks. But what we've really found to be meaningful is that quiet, private 2-minute interaction where we're really reaching someone who's actually not probably the gun owner. It's the family member, it's the neighbor, it's the friend, it's the cousin, it's the what have you, who knows of that loved one that they really know should be locking it up and it should be more safe for myriad reasons that they understand that are complex. And it's a very delicate conversation we're asking people to have. But I think that a school setting is that place where they're picking it up at a parent-teacher conference, they're picking it up or they hear about it at an athletic event or what have you, and they have that courage to have that difficult conversation to get that particular firearm locked up. And that's what we want to build on. And it was said so perfectly momentarily ago that it's really actually the education piece that's even so much more important than the lock itself sometimes. It's that we are having these difficult conversations that moves the ball down the field.
Okay. And then one more question came up. Are there any legal ramifications to putting a gun lock on someone else's firearm?
What a fascinating legal quandary you have presented at this hour, Governing Board Member Shaw. Yes, potentially. I do believe it could be. I do believe we must be wise and delicate about this. I think unwanted tampering with property could be difficult, which is why I describe it thus. That families are going to have difficult conversations. And they are. They are. We know they are in the last 2 years. In 2021 was awful. We had hair trigger, temper homicides between strangers, between roommates, over parking spots. Strangers over parking spots twice in 2021. We had homicides. And I think that we have moved forward in time where families and neighbors and communities are taking better care of each other, and they are sensing ahead of time when someone is not in a good place and should not be openly carrying without it being locked up. I think we are. I think we're having these difficult conversations, and the data is the proof.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so this is a study action, so if we had anybody that would be interested in making a motion? Mr. Romero? Yes, Ms. Ekstrom.
I motion to approve the intergovernmental agreement between Pima County and the Tucson Unified School District for firearm safety at TUSD schools.
Second.
All right, we got 2 seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, passes 4-0. Thank you guys very much for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
Can we get a picture? Can we get a picture?
Yes.
Okay.
We're going to take a quick pause for a picture and get right back up. Oops. All right, so next up, backing it on up, we're going to do the consent agenda, and I want to see if any of the other board members have anything that they would like to discuss or pull. All right, seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
We got a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item passes 4-0. 6.2, formation of governing board appointed TUSD bond oversight committee. Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, and this is the moment that before I do anything else, I would be remiss if I didn't thank the Tucson Unified community. The overwhelming support that we saw for Proposition 496 with an almost 60% approval for the total and complete physical transformation of the facilities of the Tucson Unified School District, everything from classroom renovations to stronger safety and security features for our schools, to better parking lots, to more modernized learning spaces for students, signifies a shift in this community's belief in the district, this community's trust and confidence in the district to do the things that we say we're going to do. I remember being here in 2017 and receiving a very different message from the electorate, a 60% no vote on our request at that time for around $125 million bond. And when you ask the community for this kind of a support, you can have the best campaign team, you can run an amazing campaign, you can have all the strategic consultants in place, you can have a compelling package, you can have an attractive tax rate, but it comes down to the electorate's belief about the organization, its belief in the organization, its trust in the organization, and the relationship that the electorate has with the organization. And I think that we saw this past Tuesday, we saw a community now that is willing to believe in the Tucson Unified School District, and that hasn't always been the case. We have a responsibility to honor this newfound trust and belief in this district and to do the things that we have promised to do in this bond package. And one of the things that we promised to do immediately, we're going to follow through with tonight, in a few moments. We promised the electorate, we promised this community that we would establish a governing board appointed bond oversight committee to work hand in hand with the district to ensure that every single cent of every single dollar would be spent in exactly the way that we presented it to the electorate. And tonight we're proud to put that commitment before our governing board as we ask them to establish a governing board appointed bond oversight committee. So I'm going to turn it over to our general counsel who crafted the resolution here this evening for our governing board to consider. Mr. Ross?
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo, and good evening, governing board members. What I attached to the board agenda item here is a draft resolution establishing the bond oversight committee, and you'll notice a lot of similarities with this and the budget oversight committee. There are a couple of discussion points in here for you, and that is how many members the board wishes to have on this committee, and then what the length of the term is. The budget oversight committee has 13 members, pretty big committee, and the terms are 4 years, just for context. So that's one point of discussion that the board can have. The other thing that I did here was there are some minimums that I'm suggesting for the bond oversight committee to have in bylaws. But this is not bylaws. This is just a resolution establishing, and then the mission would be for the oversight committee to develop those bylaws with these minimums that I've suggested in here. All those come from your budget oversight committee as well, and then bring that back to you for final approval when they convene their first meeting and decide how they're going to work together, and then present to you their bylaws. So that's an overview of what this resolution is. And again, there are the two kind of discussion points about how big you wish the committee to be and how long the term should be.
All right, so those are our little blank spots that we have on here. Do we have any initial feedback on this from our board members? Ms. Lynn Rose.
Thank you, Mr. Romero. I almost called you Dr. Shaw. Force of habit.
That's okay.
Okay. So Mr. Ross, you said that the Budget Advisory Committee, we have 13?
Yes.
That's an odd number.
You're right.
It is. It's an odd number.
At least that's what's in their bylaws.
Correct. Persons must be at least 18 years of age and be affiliated with TUSD, including parents, guardians of students, employees, representative of the Tana Autumn Nation, Pasquayaki tribe, owners of a business within TUSD boundaries, and or community members residing within TUSD. I would like to see like a number around 10 members. I think that's more than enough to get perhaps a nice mix of parents, students, employees, well, not students, but parents, employees, the other representatives, just because 13 just seems, the bigger the board, the more, I think sometimes it's hard to get things done. So I think 10 is a nice, good number. I don't like to hear what my colleagues have to say. But I also wanted to make just a quick comment to thank the TUSD community for supporting the bond. We would be having different conversations perhaps if that had not passed. And we're going to it's just nice to know that the community does support our district and our kids and all the hardworking staff. So thank you so much for supporting Tucson Unified. I'll turn that over to the rest of my colleagues.
Shaw?
Thank you, Mr. Romero. I'm leaning more towards maybe a 13-member committee because I know there's going to be a lot of people who are interested in serving on this one. And, because the Budget Advisory Committee is 13 and it deals with how we handle our budget, I think it makes sense to kind of mimic the members for each of these respective boards, committees. And so this resolution isn't like the charter, but it will serve as maybe a guide for the charter that will be taken to the board later on, if passed.
That was the idea, Ms. Shaw, is to give kind of the guidelines for at least a starting point for the committee to develop their bylaws, like these minimums that they have to address quorum requirements, they have to address compliance with the open meeting law, they need to address the board's policy on having an item on their agendas for a call to the audience. And also access to information. They're going to need information just like all your committees do to do their work. So those were the kind of the minimums, and then leave it to them. At least the idea was leave it to them to come back with a more detailed bylaws or for the board to consider. We can work with them. Mr. Hernandez and I can work with them on showing them what the Budget Advisory Committee bylaws look like, to see if they want to use more of that in their document. That was the idea. You're right. Just to kind of give them a guide and have them do the work and bring it back to you, because we don't know who they're going to be yet, right? We don't know how they're going to work together.
Okay, I guess I was just because of the Alternative Education Committee, like we as a board developed the charter and passed it. So for this one, why are we asking the committee members to carry out that task?
Well, my idea was you have minimums and they're in your existing committees. And also, I don't know how many there are going to be on here. That makes a difference with quorum. Do you know how many there are going to be, and what do you want it to be for a quorum? That has been a problem with some committees. Can they do their business? Do they want to have other items that will help them do their work? You could do a full charter if you wanted to. I'm happy to draft one, and then all they do is walk in and do what it says. My idea was to give your community members an opportunity to develop that, but we can certainly go a different way and give them a charter.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm okay either way, but I think things such as how many members are serving on there and the quorum numbers are some things that we can set as a governing board.
I did make sure that you are deciding how many are on there.
Section.
Mr. Romero, I agree. I think it should be a 13-member board, and then maybe to serve maybe 2 and 4 years, because we don't want to we don't want to have these individuals have to serve out 4 years if they don't want to. So maybe we could have a staggered term where some serve 4 and some serve 2. I think that would be okay. That way we're not turning over new board members every 2 years. That would be my suggestion.
Okay. Real quick on for me over here. First of all, again, I want to be, publicly, this is very important for all the board members to have the transparency and have a committee that oversees this, an oversee committee. So this is very important that we got this put on the agenda immediately, because again, we have built some trust with the voters of the city, and we need to do our due diligence. So for me, on the other committee that has 13, was there a rhyme or reason why the budgeting committee had 13 members? Do we know?
I don't know. I don't know if Mr. Hernandez does.
No. Roll the dice. That's what came on up. Also, kind of mentioning like the terms like was mentioned. I don't know if it's possible to like say their initial term is 2 years, and if they want to continue on, maybe they can continue on another 2 years with a max time frame of whether it be 2 terms or 3 terms or what, just as another option for term limits. One of the things there's a few things on this when it talks about TOC employees, representatives of total nation, et cetera, or community members residing within TUSD. I think that should be extended to within Pima County, because TUSD offers, we have stuff that we do with like a Pima County JTED, and a lot of people that own business are in town, or people may live out of the district that are coming into the district that want to be involved with this bond thing. So personally, I think we should extend it beyond the TUSD district and let anybody in Pima County be part of that. That's one thing. I don't think we should limit our outreach of quality volunteers to a small footprint of the TUSD district. And then on the back, it says BDFA. What does that stand for?
That's the policy code for stakeholder input. That's the board's policy that in part requires stakeholder input in all of your committee meetings, for example, a call to the audience session. Okay. So that BDFA is just the policy code. Okay, perfect. So on this, because it also mentions like meeting frequency, regular reporting to the governing board, I think that's going to be huge. I know we're in the audit committee, having only 4 meetings a year is making it very difficult for the audit committee to kind of come together. I feel if we're going to be doing this, we should have at least monthly meetings for this committee, and I think we should have regular reportings, whether it be every other month or something along those lines. And that's just my initial feeling, and I would like to open up conversation for the rest of the board on anything that I might have mentioned. Ms. Ekstrom.
I agree. I think monthly meetings to start out. I think the more transparent we are to the community, the more better it is for us. So I agree on that end. And then as far as having people from outside of the district, I would really like to focus on making sure that we do get parents and community members that do have a tie to Tucson Unified. So them living within the district boundaries, I think we should keep it there for now. And just a note here, Tucson is spelled wrong in the resolution.
Mr. Ross. Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
All right, thank you, Mr. Romero. So the reason I'm not exactly, I'll go first to your comment in terms of the 2-year terms. So, they could do 2 years and they term out at 6 or however long we want to send that. I like that idea instead of a staggered, somebody says, oh, 2 years is great. I've seen some and I want to move on and give somebody else a chance. I like that idea. I will disagree with having it open to Pima County because this is strictly for TUSD taxpayers. Yes, some of the businesses might live within Pima County, but not within the boundary. But if their business within the boundary, they fall underneath that caveat there. So I would really like to see this strictly to the TUSD taxpayers, especially the parents. I'm still not sold on the 13 just because of the fact that both being on the audit committee and the budget advisory committee, we have a hard time sometimes getting quorum. And it's hard for the staff that's going to have to manage everybody's schedules. I'm thinking about the budget advisory committee that's happening Friday, and Tanya, who has to really put things together and make sure everybody's got a schedule. So to me, 10, just in terms of there's 5 of us and we like 2 of them, so 2 times 5 is 10, just makes things, I think, cleaner and easier. But other than that, I think I'm glad that we're doing this committee now and not waiting until after the new year, that we're jumping on the opportunity to be as transparent as possible to our constituency.
Michelle?
Thank you. I respectfully would still like a 13-member board. I think if we do it as a 10-member board, we may be running the risk of being accused of stacking the board if each of us get 2 chosen people. And so I think, leaving some room for the community to elect themselves would be fabulous. I would also like to, I don't know if we could place those numbers about how many for each category can fill this role, because I think, having a certain amount of staff serving on this committee probably wouldn't be too helpful, because I know the community is very passionate about the bond and making sure that everything goes well. And so having an equal distribution of those committee members is critical. I'm leaning towards only allowing people within our boundaries to serve, since they are the ones who will have to pay the tax associated. But, if they have a business, then within our boundaries, then they can serve as well. So it's not just, homeowners. Yes, thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
I do think the 13 is an odd number, just in case there's 13 all together there and they have something to vote for, it breaks the tie. So that way there's not a tie vote with 10. And I do think that there has to be, a caveat that these people know that they're going to have to go to monthly meetings, and it's going to be, however long, an hour long, and really make that commitment, because this is a $480 million bond. We've seen this with Pima County. They've had a large bond advisory committee, and I think in TUSD we need to provide the same. It's a lot of money, so I think 13 people is a good number.
So I agree on the odd number for sure. And again, not knowing the rhyme or reason, I could be good with 13. Again, I just didn't know if there was anything particular that an effective committee is made of a certain amount of people. So As far as other things we need to discuss, what other things should we be discussing here, Dr. Trio?
Board Clerk Romero, members of the governing board, just a couple of points for clarification. Should the governing board tonight vote, and the public discussion certainly leads in that direction, to establish the Bond Oversight Committee, we then work with Yolanda. Yolanda, as she does with your other governing board appointed committees, will craft the necessary language of interest that would be posted. Interested individuals would then be routed to the application process that would be advertised. And though technically board members would get to quote unquote recommend, I just want to remind the community that any member serving on any governing board appointed committee has to be voted in by the majority of the board. So ideally, the administration would like to present a slate of candidates together for a governing board vote. And that, of course, would happen after a period of time in which the opportunity to serve was posted. We had an opportunity to collect applications, review applications with all of you. We obviously would be able to use executive session as it is a personnel-related matter, ultimately leading to a governing board vote, and our preference would be to do them as a group.
Anybody else? Okay, so then should we have, as far as, since it is an action item, should we go ahead and fill in kind of these blanks as far as the members appointed and the terms? Is that something we need to decide right now?
Well, I did give the opportunity for you to do that. You could also wait to do that until you get a slate of candidates and appoint them for a period of time. But my idea was the more you can give information to potential candidates, the better. So it would be, my recommendation would be go ahead and work through those issues of how many and how you want their terms to work. And if there are any other matters you want to modify this, I have the document open up here. I can as you make motions or have a consensus, I can work on that. I've already corrected Tucson, Ms. Ekstrom, so thank you.
I'm sorry. Are we able to dictate, like you're only allowed to miss like 2 meetings, out of the year in this?
You could do that here, or you could do that when the committee brings bylaws to you or charter to you. But if you want to do it up front, that could be helpful to people who are considering applying. I can see how that might be helpful to them.
I agree with that too.
Okay.
Yes, Senator Rose.
Okay, so I know I'm outnumbered here, so yes, I'll be fine with the 13. But I guess this could also fall underneath their bylaws to have reasonable expectations for meetings. Like Ms. Ekstrom said, only can miss 2 meetings. We need to have X amount of quorum. Really impose the process that this is very important. You chose to be on this committee. We voted you in this committee, and you now need to adhere to the rules of said committee. Can we write that in a way that is palatable?
I'm sure that we could. Okay. It won't be palatable to everyone, as Abraham Lincoln instructed us.
Thank you.
Dr. Trio.
I also see another opportunity to get that done in the charter process, where when you get into the mechanics of how the committee is going to function, and to get back to governing board member Shaw's original concern, even though in this particular governing board appointed committee, it's being proposed that once the committee convenes, that their immediate task is to put forth a draft of a charter, you have ultimate approval. So even if you see charter language that doesn't include what you would have originally wanted, you can impose that language, because at the end of the day, it is your committee. They're going to report to you. They're going to make recommendations. And I think if you have thoughts and expectations about meeting attendance and participation, the charter would also be a great opportunity to put that language in.
Okay. So to fill in our first blank, does everybody like that 13 number? And we can twist someone's arm.
Mm-hmm.
And then as far as terms, any other input on terms? Ms. Shaw?
Thank you. I think 2 years is a good number for terms, but are we going to allow them to serve multiple?
That's what we're talking about.
Okay, so serve, is that, okay, so 2 2-year terms is maybe what I'm proposing.
Okay, 2 2-year terms, and I know you had mentioned 2 3-year terms, section.
I can go either way.
Okay. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Mr. Ross. I'm assuming like all these other committees, there's like, it would be in perpetuity until we decided, or the board decided to end it at some point?
There are a couple of different formats that your committees have. I think Budget Advisory doesn't have a limit. I think it just has 4-year terms. But you have others that have 3-year terms or 2-year terms subject to renewal by the board.
Okay.
And those that are subject to renewal, are they like like a total of 4 years or a total of 6 years?
I don't know that any have limits. I think they're just always subject to renewal by the board.
And is it something then, say that we feel that one of those committee members aren't doing it, they can be, they're relieved of their duties at any time on that, or?
That's something that you can't, some of the bylaws, some of your charters have that. Some of them say only the board can take that action with a recommendation from the committee. If you wanted to put that right in here now, you could do that as well. Or again, as Dr. Trujillo said, you could see what the committee comes up with on that, and then you will have the ultimate authority to say whether or not that makes sense to you or not on removal and removal for attendance and such.
I think that would be a good idea to let them kind of iron out some of those things. We at least get the foundation started here, and then when they have other conversations, they come before us and we can move forward on that. As far as like he was mentioning the 2-year terms, do we want to max or do we want to automatically renew? Other thoughts? Michelle?
I think for this one, we should have term limits.
I agree also. So do we want 2 or 4? Or sorry, 2 or 3?
If I could ask Dr. Trujillo, so how the bond will last for like 10, 20, till what? 24 years. Okay, so with that in mind, I mean, I would say maybe 3. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. 3 2-year terms? Mm-hmm.
3 2-year terms.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Yes.
Mr. Romero?
Yes.
But each time the term ends, they have to come to the board to renew for a next term, right?
Is that how we normally do, Mr. Ross? Or does the committee just approve them? Or no? So they have to come back to us after every 2 years?
Yeah, with the audit committee at least, I know that they come back to you for renewal.
Okay. Yeah, so as long as that's in there, I agree, we need to have that also. So do we have any motions?
I'll try to attempt a motion.
Thanks.
Motion to approve the formation of the governing board appointed bond oversight committee with a 13-member committee with 3 2-year terms and also monthly meetings. And then with the caveat before they apply that they know that we would only want them to miss 2 meetings out of the year. Is that right?
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Is that everything that we talked about? Yeah.
I'll second.
Okay. All those so we have a motion and a second. And for a vote, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, passes 4-0. Next up on the agenda, study information items, Arizona 7.1, Arizona Department of Education school letter grades for TUSD.
Yes, Governing Board Clerk Romero, members of the Governing Board, I'd like to welcome our Senior Director for Assessment and Evaluation, Dr. Hallie Freitas, to share the great news about school letter grades earned by TUSD schools in the 22-23 school years. We are now officially a B-rated school district, rated so by the Arizona Department of Education, making the leap from a C district to a B, because now you have 57% of your schools that are A or B rated, and that is a tremendous accomplishment. So we're going to hear more about these wonderful trends. Dr. Freitas.
Thank you, and good evening. Board Clerk Romero, governing board members, Dr. Trujillo, and legal counsel. So it's my great privilege tonight to celebrate TUSD's letter grades. So first thing I'm going to do for folks who may not be familiar with letter grades is just do a little bit of history. So that is not the first slide. So I have a first slide that starts with historical review of letter grades. Keep going back. Yeah, you're going forward. Can you go back to the very beginning? Oh, that's it. Okay. Well, then this is going to be a much shorter letter grade presentation than I thought. All right. Well, let's move forward to the next slide then. Let's see. Okay. We're going to start with TUSD, and we're going to start with letter grade changes from last year to this year. And so this is elementary school, and you can see that the dark blue is last year, 21-22, and the green is 22-23, so this most recent testing. And you can see that with our elementary schools that we have a 5% increase in our A schools, and we also have a 2% increase in our B schools. So for our elementary schools, right, we have a 7% increase into our A and B rated schools. For our K-8 schools, you can see that we've maintained 7% for A schools and the same for B schools. And then there's a little bit of movement between our C and D schools. And we are very happy to report that we have no F schools at all in TUSD this year, and especially not in our K-8s. And also, this is great news for our middle schools. You can see that last year we didn't have any A schools, and this year we have 18%, or 2 of our middle schools are now A schools. And so our B schools were higher in 21-22 because some of them have moved over into the A. And so then we have some movement between the C and the D schools. And then in high school, we also had some movement. This year, there was a little bit of a change to the A through F letter grade model in the high school with the growth, and it didn't really benefit our high schools that much. The good news is that it's just a one-year change, and so next year we're going to go back to the older model, and that should benefit our high schools more. So we're seeing a little bit of movement in our high schools this year. I do want to say that one of our D schools is currently under appeal, and so fingers crossed that we can bring that up to a C. Okay, so here are all of our schools in TUSD, and you can see that we have increased our A schools by 4%. Excellent. And our Bs have stayed the same. Our Cs have gone down, and our D schools just gone up just a tiny bit, but once again, I think the appeal might change that. And then, of course, we have no F-rated schools in TUSD this year. Okay, so just a big summary. We did better this year than last year, so our trajectory is always moving up and moving forward. And so 25 of our schools increased their letter grade, whereas 20 schools decreased their letter grade, so more increased than decreased, always a good number to report. 38 of our schools stayed the same, and our alternative schools got their letter grade for the first time this year, so we don't have a 2-year comparison, so they're not included in this. Okay, so just a summary of our TUSD letter grades is that since the pandemic really took the stuffing out of TUSD, the state, and the nation. And so we have been recovering very steadily since then. And each year we've been showing a little bit more growth. And certainly academic growth has been the driving force in our letter grade improvement. And we're very proud of that. And so including alternative schools, you can see that 57% of our schools are either A or B schools, and 31% are C schools, 12% are D schools, and of course we have no F schools this year. All right, so just do some shout outs here from schools that have done an excellent job. So these 25 schools have increased their letter grade from last year to this year. And so I just want to voice their names in congratulation. So that's Blenman, Bonillas, Collier, Davis, Kellon, Steele, Oyama, Hudlow, Wright, Maldonado, Monzo, Sewell, Solangtam, Tolle, and Whitmore. So all of those elementary schools increased their letter grade. Well done. And in our K-8s, we have Druckman, Miles, and Safford, all increased their letter grades. In our middle schools, Dodge, Doolin, Vale, Valencia, and Wakefield. So that's a big win for our middle schools. And then our high schools, both Pueblo and Rincon, increased their letter grades this year. Okay, so these are our superstars. You know, some schools increase one letter grade and we really celebrate them, but other schools really just wanted to show the rest of the world how great they really are. And so Blenman went up 2 letter grades from a D to a B. Kellon went from a C to an A. Well done. Solangtam, also C to an A. Miles, C to an A. Those are big jumps. And then our superstar this year is Safford, K-8, that went from an F to a B. So that has now changed. So 3 letter grades for Safford. All right, and this is an important historical view of the progress of TUSD. On the left-hand side, those first sets of bars is 2016-17, and you're looking at 7 years of data, right? Some data isn't showing because those were COVID years, but so the way that you look at it is that the A schools are the blue bars, the green schools are the B, yellow is C, gray is D, and orange is F. And so what's really important about this slide is if you look from 2016-17 to 22-23, our most recent testing, we went from having 10% A schools, you guys are gonna have to help me, does that say 18? 16? 16, thank you. Maybe I need better glasses, but yeah, so that's a 6% increase in our A schools, right? In our B schools, we've gone from 27% to 41. In our C schools, we've decreased from 34 to 31. Thank you. And our D schools, right, from 20% to 12. And really awesome, our F schools from 10% to 0. So you can see over time that TUSD has been steadily improving their performance as rated by the A through F letter grade model. So that's a big, big congratulations longitudinally for TUSD. And are there any questions?
Board members? Ms. Shaw?
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation.
You bet.
This is really exciting to see. Congratulations to all the schools that improved, all the parents, all the students, and the staff who helped get us here. I just have a question about like the alternative schools that aren't included, and that's because there's not enough data, right? But will there, do they get like polled like any normal school?
So this year, the alternative schools did receive letter grades. So Project More received an A, and TAP received a B.
Oh, nice.
The only reason they weren't included on those 2-year comparisons is this is the first year that they've gotten a letter grade in a while. So they did a great job this year, and we're very proud of them. So they're part of our Superstar AB schools. Yep.
Nice. Thank you for that. And then could you talk a little bit about the appeal process for those schools that are actively appealing or who have appealed?
Yeah, so ADE provides an opportunity to appeal, and it's very limited. There are 3 conditions under which a school can appeal. And one is an emergency or a tragedy. Another is if there's something that's beyond the school's control, like the air conditioning goes out, right, and the students have adverse testing conditions. And the third one might be if there's an external, like a big car accident outside the school that messes with the flow of the day. So those are really the only 3 ways that you can appeal. So you can't appeal if you don't like your letter grade. You can't appeal if you don't like the system. So it has to be very evidence-based, and it has to be really outside of the school's control.
Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? So quick question or explanation for you. I've learned about this school grading system, but just for the general public, before I was here, I had no idea what it meant to get a school grade. Can you explain why this is so important, especially when we see schools that jump 2 grade levels, or the one in particular, Safford 3, because it's not just at proficiency, it's also showing an increased improvement, if I'm correct. If you can explain that for all those that are listening that might be parents that don't understand.
Yeah, I'm happy to explain it. So the A through F letter grade model has different components. And to move up letter grades means that you have to do better in most of those components. And so it doesn't just look at one aspect of schooling, it looks at multiple aspects. And so for an A-rated school, they're moving on all cylinders, right? And a B school's moving on most cylinders. And so the components are proficiency. So that's always important. How many of our students are at grade level? The second one, which is the biggest part of the pie for K-8, is growth. So we know that many students may not make it to grade level that year, but we want to see that they have high growth or they have average growth. And so growth is a huge component of the K-8 model. And English language proficiency and growth is another big piece of it's worth 10 points of the model. And then acceleration and readiness. And so that looks at a bunch of different smaller components of the school, like how kids do year over year by ethnicity or by program. So those are really the 4 big ones. In high school, it's a little bit different. They look at graduation rates. And they also look at something called a college and career readiness indicator, which is about, I think it's 21 indicators of a student's experience in high school. And so they get points for all these different accomplishments, like AP courses or CTE courses or fine art SEALs. So there's a bunch of dual credits. So there's a whole bunch of different criteria. And so we get to add those up over a student's experience at high school. And so we get points for that in the high school model.
Thank you for explaining that.
Yeah.
And then I did have a couple of questions on the one that the high school where we had 15% D, and you mentioned there was some type of change in the grading thing with the state, or?
Yeah, so with the growth, really what you want to do is compare students against themselves. That's the best way to compare growth. Our 11th graders last year who took the ACT, the last time they took a test was in 7th grade, right? Because of COVID and all the problems, and the state decided there was too much time between those two testing to make one a pre and one a post. So what they did is they compared the 11th grade cohort last year, 22-23, to the year prior, the cohort 21-22. So it wasn't kids compared against themselves, it was kids compared against another grade level. And so for us in TUSD, because we really perform well when we can show growth, that it wasn't as great a metric for us. But next year, they're going to go back to that.
Okay. And did we see how we did compared to our districts around our area? Have we come?
Yes. So, the much longer version of the PowerPoint, one of the things I looked at was the 7 largest school districts in the state of Arizona, because we wanted to see, was the tremendous improvement from TUSD something that all large school districts experienced, or was it really something that TUSD could hang their hat on? And what we found was that the 7 largest districts, that TUSD was like second highest in growth. So Mesa showed really high growth, but TUSD was right in there. And some of the larger districts actually lost points, the number of A and B schools this year versus TUSD, and Mesa did a great job.
Okay, and then one more question. On one of the slides, when you're comparing the KA schools, I don't know if we can go back to that slide, Jean? Right there. So we see in Ds on this one, an increase in Ds from this year, and of course a decrease in the Cs. I'm sure going to help out of that. Do we have an idea why that might have gone up in those K-8s versus like the elementaries and the middle schools?
So one thing, part of the reasons the D went up was because the F moved up, right? So moved out of the F category. But we, the letter grade is, once again, sensitive to different changes in a school. And so schools can move up and down each year. And so we did have a couple schools that went down in our K-8s, but I don't expect them to stay down for long.
Okay, and then will we be monitoring, because I know we have the pilot program with those schools where the 6th graders, can stay into that school, and so there'd be less in those K-8s. I'm thinking, will we be monitoring if those grades or the school level increases or decreases based on that pilot program also?
Yeah, so my understanding is that the pilot program is for elementary schools to build a 6th grade, right? The K-8s will stay pretty much the same, that the most impacted schools will be the K-5s that are adding the grade, and then the feeder middle schools that may wait a year for those students to join them. But I think the K-8s are probably going to stay pretty stable.
Okay, that's all I had. Any other questions? Ms. Lina Rose.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for your presentation. First of all, congratulations to everybody, and that we're a B-rated district. But kind of along the lines of Mr. Romero, I kind of wanted to ask about the high school letter grades, because it says here that it went up 15%, and the last time it was at 0. So I'm kind of curious, like, what are going to be like the strategies going forward?
So with the high schools, I do feel as though the changes in the letter grade was more a reflection of the model than anything that is or isn't being done at our high schools, right? And so I expect next year to see that we're most likely going to have all A, B, and C high schools like we've had in the past.
Okay. And that's great, but sometimes I think for the general public, that's a lot of nuance. So we can, work to make sure the community knows that we're working to get out of the Ds.
Absolutely. Yeah. And no school likes to be labeled a D
Right,
school.
no, they
And
don't.
so of course we're going out, my department's going out to every single school in the district and reviewing their letter grade and working with them on strategies for improvement. And we have special attention on the D schools and helping them institute plans to move forward. So yeah, we're very actively working with them to create an action plan.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
No more questions. Well, thank you, Dr. Freitas, for your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Trujillo. Right.
All right, next up, 7.2, current status of ESSER 1, 2, and 3. Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, as the life of the ESSER provided funds from the American Rescue Plan, Elementary, Secondary, Schools Economic Recovery Fund. For those of you in the viewing public, when we say ESSER, that's what it means. We've had 3 iterations now of the fund distributing or allocating dollars to the district, and the sun will set on these dollars June 30th of 2024. And here to give you an update on where we stand with our expenditures and our remaining balances, it's our Director for Federal Grants and Federal Programs, Mr. John Lanza.
Great, thank you, Dr. Trujillo. Good evening, Clerk Romero, Governing Board members, and Superintendent Trujillo and the public. So this is an overview of where we stand with ESSER 1, 2, and 3. And some of this will be a bit of a review just to kind of lay the groundwork of where we started and some of where the funding went. So just as review, ESSER 1 has closed out. That closed out September 30th of 2022. ESSER 2 also has been fully spent, and that closed out just a couple months ago, September 30th, 2023. Right now, the remaining funds are in ESSER 3. And so the governing board has approved many of those positions and funding that went into academic loss programs for this past school year, and we're currently using the funds in those areas. This grant closes just short of a year from now, so September 2024 is when the funding is expiring. So just as a summary, you've seen some of this before, but just to kind of maybe paint a picture here of where some of the funding went. There are different categories that we're really focused on. One of the main ones was staffing. And so this is a snapshot from 2022, kind of at the height of when we had a lot of our positions in play. Just on the left, you see different positions that we were able to provide to the schools. Behavior specialists, counselors, curriculum service providers, a wide range of needs in the schools were met with this. On the right-hand side is just, again, a summary of the high points, the max amount of funding that was going into staffing. That occurred in October 2022. We had 441 FTE that were being paid through ESSER. 300 of those FTE were in schools, and you'll see, I guess, a little deeper dive in what some of those positions are in a second. There were 17 district funded positions, and then TUVA at the time was being funded through ESSER. So ESSER funding was what allowed TUVA to really get its legs underneath it and get started. And so this was really the funding source for TUVA's development the first 2 years. So that's, again, the high point of October 2022 with the amount of staffing. We also, in that second checklist there, payroll support for services back in when the pandemic was really going and people weren't in schools working. This helped us to keep people employed. In 2020 and 2021, we had certain segments of our school district who weren't able to actually do the jobs that they were hired to do, bus drivers, our cafeteria workers. This allowed to keep some of that payroll in place and stabilize it. The third check mark there are different stipends that you have approved over this time. We at one point had safe space. We were opening up the schools to our children in need. We had return to classroom stipends, health service for additional nurses and health aides and the extra time they were putting in with contact tracing, if you remember those conversations. This allowed, extra stipends allowed them to do additional work. Transportation, vaccine, and then retention stipends were also used. And then, as I mentioned earlier, TUVA was developed during this time, staff, and it has since transitioned into its own school. An additional look at staffing. This is specifically academic staffing over the last 3 school years. This is a list of the main positions in our school. You see things like math interventionists, reading interventionists. The top left was fiscal year 22. The top right was fiscal year 23, this past year that we finished. This you'll see actually connects to a lot of the data I think that you saw with Dr. Freitas, the academic gains. We were able to really pour a lot of extra staffing into the schools to support our students coming out of the pandemic and start making up the ground that was lost academically. All those positions you see there in the school really played a role in working with students. And then in the bottom list there, fiscal 24, our current school year, we have 223 staff that are funded through ESSER. These are the academic positions that you see there that are in schools. Another category were items. Principals had a menu of items that they could select for their school. They could use their site budget on. These items were all allowable under ESSER. You can see the different categories. There were academic items, a lot of instructional support, some supplemental material. There was educational technology. I mean, we bought tens of thousands of computers to be able to do virtual learning. Social emotional learning in the middle column, back when we were really had a lot of PPE and sanitation needs in the school, we were able to address those. And then on the right-hand side, minimizing transmission, a lot of learning space adjustments, and that was seen in the form of capital projects in the schools. A third area, we just mentioned it, the projects in the school. And just a quick summary, there are 198 school projects that occurred. Some of this took the form of outdoor learning spaces, renovating learning spaces. I think we've all seen some of the pictures out of Pueblo and some of the work they've done with renovating their library into usable space. Lots of shade coverings. This really provided a lot of outdoor space. That was under the guidance of a lot of the CDC guidance that was coming out of allowing kids space to eat outside and get out of the classroom environment contained inside the school. Three major district projects occurred, touchless water fountains throughout our schools and buildings, outdoor hand washing stations, and then air conditioning recommissioning that occurred about a year ago at 23 sites. A little deeper look at the academic impact that this had. So you saw all of those academic positions that were in schools. This is also complements what Dr. Freitas shared in the indicators of academic success and growth occurring in our district. Pre-pandemic, we had 10 schools that were in CSI, Comprehensive School Improvement. Post-pandemic, we were at 0. As of October of this year, just last month, we have no schools that are labeled with CSI designations for school improvement. We also, pre-pandemic, had 4 schools that were in a different version, school improvement grant, the SIG grant that you see there. We now have 0 there. So we right now have 0 schools in any form of comprehensive school improvement. We have school improvement for subgroups, but the overarching kind of what we would think of as school improvement with the state involvement, right now we have 0 involved. This data was actually shared with the Federal Department of Education. They wanted a pre-pandemic, post-pandemic look in reporting of how our schools had changed during that time. And this was an exciting piece of information to share with them, that pre to post, our schools, as far as school improvement, had really improved. This data you also saw in Dr. Freitas' presentation. This again was part of some Federal Department of Education reporting that I had to do. Looking at the letter grades, and this mirrors what she shared earlier, but pre-pandemic in 2019 to post-pandemic in 2023, you can see the change in letter grades there on the right. We added 6 A schools, we added 9 B schools, we lost 3 C schools, lost 3 D schools, and lost 5 F schools. Those are all numbers you want to see the A's and B's going up, you want to see the other side of the equation going down. So this is very clear that there was academic success. In my view, looking at it through this ESSER lens, what we were able to bring to the schools, what the principals were able to do with their funding in the schools really had an academic impact. On the bottom, you see some of the numbers that Dr. Freitas shared with our change from A schools to B schools pre-pandemic. 42% of our schools were A and B. Post-pandemic, 58% of the schools were A and B. Okay, now one more academic look at academic loss. So as you know from these presentations over the past several years, we had to reserve 20% of our ESSER 3 funding for academic loss. And there were specific things that the state allowed us to count as academic loss. So the top line you see up there was our goal. $34.5 million was what we had to allocate to academic loss. So we did that in 2 main ways. We did it in positions and we did it in programs. So right after that top line, you see the positions line. We spent $25 million in approved positions for academic loss. We've reviewed those in the past. They were things like our interventionists, our RTI, response to intervention teachers. They also took the form of counselors, social workers, teaching assistants were a had a huge impact in our schools and working face-to-face, day-to-day with kids. All of those counted in the academic loss positions you see there. It's broken down by year, the amount of funding we put into those. We also were able to pay for some of the kindergarten teachers' salary. The state only pays for 50%. And there was, you remember in the midst of the pandemic, all these funding sources were really tight. And so there was risk at different points of could we do full day kindergarten? How would this get covered? And this is one of the areas that we were able to use ESSER funding to cover. The bottom section with programs, $13 million was spent on academic loss programs. The majority of that was in summer school that you see listed there. We've had big, robust summer schools the last several years, and it's been great. Every school, every student available to go. But that was a result of ESSER funding that did count for academic loss. The bottom total there is what we spent approved for academic loss, $38 million. So we've hit the mark. We needed to spend a minimum of $34.5 million. We spent $38 million in the area of academic loss. So that requirement has been met for this ESSER 3 grant. Okay, so here's where we are getting to, just looking at ESSER 3 and what was left. On the left-hand column, you have what we started our ESSER 3 amount with, so $172.9 million. We had expenditures in FY22 in the amount of $21 million. We had expenditures in FY23 at just over $101 million. So we came into this school year, FY24 school year, with about $49.8 million of unspent ESSER funds. So now on the right-hand box there, right-hand column, that is this school year, starting with $49.8 million at the top, where we have spent ESSER 3 funding this school year. The fall stipend that is going out, I believe, in a couple weeks here. The summer school planning for this next summer school will be in place. School and department positions, $13.5 million. Kindergarten teachers, $2.5 million of that was impacting their salaries. Curriculum for social emotional learning, Character Strong, curriculum for school improvement. And then down at the bottom, we have some construction that rolled over to this year that counted for ESSER 3. Bottom line, we are ending, have left right now unallocated $5.5 million in ESSER 3 funding. So that's where we stand right now in this fiscal year. We have $5.5 million that has not been allocated to be spent this school year. And that's where I need your direction and just your thoughts on where, as a governing board, you would want to spend that last remaining amount. Our timeline that we're looking at, really this fall semester is when a final funding decision would need to be made by the governing board. We do have to write this into a grant, so however you determine this should be spent, we'll need to write it and get it approved in the grant before we start doing the spending for that final $5.5 million. There will be slight changes in that amount, as we finish up things like pay and benefits with staff this school year. So there might be real slight adjustments up and down with that. And then finally, the bottom bullet there, indirect cost has not been taken out of ESSER 3. We are allowed to take over just $1 million in indirect costs from ESSER 3. So that is a consideration for you, that we can take indirect costs from ESSER 3. We did take, if you remember, indirect costs from ESSER 2. So some of the final amounts left in ESSER 2, we took that as indirect costs, and that goes basically just into the district to use. Okay, so that is an option that you would have as a governing board. So that is the information I wanted to share with you, an update on where we stand with ESSER 3. If there are any additional questions or discussion, we'll just open it up at this time.
Board members? Dr. Trio?
Yeah, I know with all things money, we always like to give you a study, so there's no vote tonight. We wanted to get the board thinking about what it may want to do with the remaining balance. We probably will be back December 12th for some definitive governing board direction in the form of a study action item about how it wants to allocate the remaining dollars, because we also want to meet the timeline that our director, Mr. Lanza, has asked, that we want to get this taken care of before the end of the fall semester so that we can get it written into the grant, spend it down before it runs out on June 30th, 2024.
Go ahead, Ms. Shaw.
Thank you. And thank you for your presentation, Mr. Lanza.
You're welcome.
Personally, I would like to see some of the remaining money go towards our libraries. I know I haven't been very successful in allocating some of this funding to our libraries, but I think that would be a great way to use up the remainder of the money, and also our arts programs, if they need any additional materials or things. That would be my top 2 suggestions.
Okay.
Thank you. So, Mr. Lanza, are there any special needs that we've kind of seen out there that we should be considering?
So the one challenge with this funding is it's short term, right? So we've got essentially one semester, January through June. It does go into September, but that's the challenge with this. So what can we do with funding in that short amount of time? We can't use it on staffing. That would probably be, I think, all of our first wish if we could spend it anywhere. And then we really don't have time for any more large capital projects. Those take most of the time longer than a semester. So really the top 2, I think what we'd agree would be needs, are really don't fit the timeline that we have. It could be smaller items, as Ms. Shaw said, with libraries or supplemental materials, but that's kind of I guess the category that the one category we'd be able to do. Indirect cost, that option is on the table. That does allow flexibility for us as a district after the grant expires. If it goes indirect cost, it does not have to be used in those timelines of September 2024. So that does provide some flexibility if it's in indirect costs.
So how does the process of indirect costs go? Give me the kindergarten version.
Essentially, it gets written off as a set aside in the grant. So it's just taken right out of the grant. It basically goes right back to the district.
Okay. Any other comments? All right. Thank you, Mr. Lanza. Appreciate it very much, Sean.
You're
All right. 7.3, school year 24-25 elementary school K-6 pilot program instructional framework for 6th grade. Dr. Trio.
Yes, governing board members, I know at the last governing board meeting, we thank you for your authorization to offer an expansion of 6th grade choices for parents throughout the district. But in our presentation, it was largely operational because it needed to be. We needed to give you the operational logistics around spatial capacity and movement and scheduling, timelines for construction and portable renovations necessary for you to vote. But before I welcome our regional assistant superintendent and seasoned middle school educator and leader, Mr. Richard Sanchez, to talk us through the how, the instruction, let's talk about the vision. We know by the data that we look at from year to year that parents have concerns about the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade experience. We've seen it in surveys, we've seen it in enrollment data, we've seen it anecdotally as we've run into parents across the district. That transition point from going from your first, a child's first 5 or 6 years in the educational system, having one self-contained environment, one relationship, the concept of the homeroom teacher, the same person that I see every single day, the same set of 20 relationships, my classmates that are with me all day, the same campus community, the same lunch person, the same bus driver, the same custodian that greets me every morning. And at a time that I'm developing as a young adult and I'm going through puberty and I'm learning what it is to get older and be older and make better decisions, I'm thrust into a new environment, an environment that's significantly larger, sometimes 3 or 4 times larger than my elementary school. 1,000 students, 1,200 students, relationships I haven't established, kids I don't know, young people I've never met. And then I have 6 different adult personalities, relationships, and sets of expectations that I have to adjust to. I have to adjust to a whole new way of learning. I have to adjust to content-based instruction, history, math, and science taught in isolation by singular instructors. And they all have different thoughts about responsibility and tardiness and work completion and makeup tests. And it's a wonder why at times our sixth graders are overwhelmed and sometimes they shut down. And they do what young people do. They disconnect and they start choosing disconnection in the form of truancy, either tardiness or staying out of school altogether. We know by a lot of the research that sixth grade is a key entry point in the K-12 pipeline, on par with kindergarten. We know that kindergarten is the main entry point, but sixth grade, a time of urgency with regard to algebra readiness and literacy, because we know that when sixth graders start their sixth, seventh, and eighth grade journey, it's no longer about learning literacy or learning how to read. It becomes reading to access the content areas of social studies and science and the other humanities courses. That's the big shift. And we know that we have to find a way to do that better. And so for our parents that are listening, this is a different way of thinking about sixth grade. This is a what if your child or your young person could stay for just one more pivotal year in this environment where they've been for 5 years, where they've had stable relationships and they've had stable friendships and they've had predictable routines and procedures and they've had the same relationships day in and day out, greeting them every morning in the lunchroom or at the crosswalk or on the bus. What if for one more pivotal year, sixth grade, we kept them in that environment to put together a high quality transition experience for them so that what I talked about before doesn't happen. So when they go to seventh grade, they're ready. They're ready for that larger environment. They're ready for content-based instruction. They're ready for navigating relationships with more adults on a campus. And that's the spirit of the initiative, more so than the enrollment. The spirit is with creating a better, stronger, more confident, more well-prepared middle schooler. And if along the way we have better enrollment outcomes, that's the cherry on top. And that's what we're hoping. We want to offer the best sixth grade experience that we can possibly offer for these students. So with that, to kind of get more into the why, I just kind of wanted to give you a little bit about the vision. But day to day, how are we going to get there? I want to turn it over to Mr. Richard Sanchez, who for many years served as a distinguished middle school educator at really pivotal roles as a counselor and then as a teacher, and then, of course, leading Mansfield, one of the largest middle schools in the district, for almost a decade. So he knows a thing or two about sixth graders, seventh graders, and eighth graders. Mr. Sanchez.
Well, thank you, Dr. Trio. I really appreciate the introduction and the overview. Good evening, Board Clerk, Romero, board members, Dr. Trujillo. I really am here on behalf of a group of now K-6 principals and so the work that we did together dating back about a year ago when we know that this was a possibility of becoming a pilot program for the district. And it was work that we came collectively together to really talk about what would the sixth grade experience look like. And Dr. Trujillo has mentioned many of the various charges and the mental models that we had. But I'll even take it further. One of our mental models was to no longer really see, last year, fifth grade, but now sixth grade in the 24-25 school year as the end to elementary, but actually the beginning to secondary. And if we can continue to sort of have that mental model that last year in elementary is really the opportunity for us to really make sure our students are well prepared for those middle school years, and in particular, 7th and 8th grade. And let's create an experience for them that is very unique than their previous experience at the school. Then we will really better serve them and better serve the middle school environments if we're able to really have a great instructional model for them. So as Dr. Trio stated, and conversations that you had at the dais on October 24th was, well, why choose sixth grade in elementary school? And what you see before you is really a professional conversations that we had throughout the year, our own personal knowledge in running middle school and running elementary schools, experiences that we have with our fifth graders, and then we hear about their experience over into sixth grade and how pivotal their age is and how that experience is when they transition over to middle school. And so these were just some anecdotal kind of feedback that we really wanted to provide the board. But we also wanted to be rooted in research. I believe there was a question by Miss Luna Rose that was asked, like, why did we go to middle school in the first place? And Dr. Trio talked about it. It wasn't based on academic instruction. It was based on capacity. It was based on facilities. And we really want to look at and make sure that was rooted when we started doing our work in what kind of research is out there. And there's not a lot out there, but we were able to find a study by Duke University that really does speak to the difference between a student leaving elementary and going into a 6th through 8th grade model versus staying in a K-5. And you can see it before you, where it talks about how they are able to really define their academic success much better in that elementary setting. They're able to build more relational capacity as well. And when you look at things like disciplinary issues, truancy, attendance, they certainly are able to mitigate that at the elementary model as well. So with that being said, we really had a charge as a committee to come up with basically 3 goals for ourselves. The first one is to create a unique educational experience. What we meant by that is that we're just not going to say congratulations to these schools, these 10 schools, and say, all we want you to do is replicate 5th grade now into 6th, because that's truly not going to help prepare our students for that transition. We really want to create a unique experience for them at that 6th grade level. 2, we want to really make sure that they are prepared for algebra readiness, for literacy and writing at the secondary level, and make sure that we're making a concerted effort in that particular grade level of offering a lot of integration in their subject area to making sure that that skill set is mastered. And then last but not least, to incorporate aspects of middle school, but in a smaller learning environment. To take things like periods and transitions and incorporate them into the 6th grade model in an elementary school will help better prepare them as they go off into 7th and 8th grade in a larger campus. So I'll take you through each of those goals. So the first one is basically a bell schedule model that we would have the schools kind of follow. Now this is just, I just want to be very clear for our viewing public, this is just a mock-up of what a schedule would look like. And the reason that we really want to emphasize there being a period-based model is because there is a difference between an elementary model and a middle school model. An elementary model tends to follow what they call a schedule. At the secondary level, we call it periods. So what's the difference? Well, when you're teaching at an elementary, the schedule allows for built-in autonomy by the teacher to go ahead and expand or contract their schedule based on how the lesson is going. So if I'm an elementary teacher teaching math, and you're my students, and I have it designated or scheduled for 60 minutes of math, I have the flexibility based on how the lesson is going to expand that to 70 minutes. Hey, let's add on 10 more, and then I can adjust. I know mentally I'm gonna adjust how we do things in the afternoon. Or if things are going really well, I can stop at the 50-minute mark and then transition to another content. But at middle school, we don't do that because everything is period-based. So at period-based, there is a designated time slot for when everything happens. And what we have found with 5th graders who transition to 6th grade, they're not used to that. They're used to sort of the expansion. And what happens is they're not used to it being designated as periods. And what happens in the secondary model is the teacher knows, I only have these students for 52 minutes. That's all I have them for, because the bell's going to ring. And so they get really super hyper-focused, as they should, on standards-based instruction, and it tends to be delivered sort of accelerated because they know they only have the students for so long. And that can be a tough transition for students coming in from an elementary model that is used to flexibility. So we do want to build in that stamina for students in 6th grade so they understand a period-based model, but as you will see with our instructional format, they will still allow for some flexibility in there as we move forward. So you'll see here as well, that we do expect there to be them to understand what transitions mean, what it is to start a period and to end a period and put things away and bring out other items, instructional items. Many of them are used to that at the K-5 level already. And we wouldn't necessarily say that the student would be transitioning 6 times a day. They would, if we do a block kind of schedule, which we're proposing, they're really only transitioning 4 times a day, which is not as much as a secondary model. So this is sort of a mock-up of what it would look like. Now, what we plan on having, and for this particular slide, I really want the mental model for our board and our viewing public to be that we had 2 groups of 6th graders at one particular school site. And what we would do is we'd be offering them, of course, 2 teachers. One teacher would be solely dedicated to teaching English and social studies, what we call the humanities block. And another teacher would be teaching math and science, which is our STEM block. And the students would basically have those 2 sets of teachers teaching the 4 major contents. So instead of going to 4 different teachers at the secondary model, they're really only going to 2. And because that teacher knows what they're teaching in math, they're going to be able to incorporate that into science and vice versa, as well as in the humanities. We also want to make sure that we have our students continue to experience, at the elementary model, they're called specials. At the secondary model, they're called electives. And we really want to make sure that our students are being exposed to electives. So we have secured funding and an opportunity for all of our students to receive fine arts programming at all of our 10 K-6 schools. And that programming will be band, orchestra, visual arts, choir, theater. So they will have a choice within that structure at their school to be incorporated into one of those fine arts programs. And that truly is going to help benefit our middle schools, if you think about it, especially post-pandemic, where there were a lot of students during that pandemic time that didn't participate as much into those programs. We can really build those programs up, which leads into high school and making sure that, as we spoke earlier about the band day, that there are a lot of students participating in those kind of opportunities as well. And then, of course, we do want to give them another elective that really does focus on getting them prepared for that academic kind of rigor that occurs at the middle school level. And that's really through an opportunity to do what we call an AIMS enrichment kind of course, where we focus on study skills, organization, being able to do time management, leadership, which I'll be discussing in future slides. So we also want to make sure that this is, we spoke about us being unique and what's going to make a parent and a student understand what the unique opportunities are at their elementary school. We really broken it down into 4 different categories. The first one is providing those electives that will really prepare them for the secondary model. The second one is we really want to provide opportunities for students to have, to build their own capacity within leadership and school leadership, and really understanding what advocacy is for themselves as they transition in making an impact in the elementary, but also in secondary. Next, we want to make sure that they have an opportunity to really demonstrate their learning to the public by either having winter and spring performances occur or some kind of capstone or showcase that they can do that really demonstrates their academics and how they were really able to integrate that in research-based projects that parents and the public can come and see. That's going to be led by students. And then lastly, that we give them the opportunity, as we give 8th graders and we give high schoolers, by providing them an opportunity to go see their learning in real world kind of environments, by providing them a unique field trip where they are able to go and see their learning in action by going and visiting colleges, by going and visiting businesses, going to museums, where they are able to really see that unique experience. And it really does build on the K-5 students really looking forward to becoming, quote unquote, that 6th grader. So as we talk a little bit about the unique electives that we want to offer, I just really want to point out sort of the AVID enrichment elective. Now, AVID stands for So it stands for Advancement via Individual Determination. I apologize. And these are basically the career and college pathways that we have that each and every single one of the students, we want them to follow. And so what we really want to do is just build teamwork and capacity in each of these. So if you see the first one where it says building relational capacity, that's where we would incorporate all of those kind of teamwork skills, those leadership skills that we need moving forward. Making sure we utilize what we call in AVID WICOR strategies, and that stands for writing, inquiry, collaboration, organization, and reading. So in these electives, we would really make sure that we're emphasizing each and every single one of those components as we continue to strengthen our students for that transition into secondary schools. And then we talk about school leadership and making sure that there's opportunities via AVID enrichment to make sure that there's school leadership opportunities for students. And those things really talk about making sure that students have really good verbal communication skills. That you as board members, as you go visit schools, I know most of you sort of interface with the principal, but why not interface with the 6th grade student at the elementary school who takes you around and shows you what it's like to be at that said school and is able to answer all of your questions. Being able to build up the leadership characteristic of empathy by having our 6th graders really meet with younger students and gain perspective of what's happening with them and do some peer mediation that could occur. Also regarding having student advocacy in school-based events that happen all throughout the year, that really is based on goal orientation, responsibility, and making sure that they have a voice with the administration there, with the PTAs, to really voice different things that they want to do. And then last but not least, participate in community service. We know many of our campuses participate in beautification projects, and this is really building that characteristic of willingness to serve and that responsibility task for being a part of a community and a school. And then 6th grade showcase, as I stated earlier, is just an opportunity for them to demonstrate their learning, whether that be through performing arts, whether that be through visual arts, or that be through some kind of academic research project, that they were able to lead that project, lead that event with their voice, and really be able to showcase how they are ready to transition over to middle school. And then last but not least, throughout the year, through our elective programs and through our core programs as well, we would ask them to participate in a research-based project. A project that takes through the academic year for them to research a destination, the significance of why they're researching it, do literature review, the importance and the implication of that research, and be able to present that out at the set showcase. But it also, in each of these components, really does prepare them for that middle school where we do many of these things already. And then, of course, be able to provide them transportation to really see it in action by going and visiting a museum, a college, doing a campus tour, or visiting a business. And with that being said, I will open it up for questions. I do want to just reiterate something the committee asked me to say to you, and that is they are super excited about this initiative. They are thankful for your vote that came on October 24th about expanding to K-6 at these 10 schools and making them a pilot program. And they are excited to keep their students for another year, and more importantly, expose them to these kind of instructional model that will help prepare them for secondary school. Thank you.
Board members? Ms. Shaw?
Thank you for the presentation. So I'm wondering if there's anything that we're doing or we will do to eventually prepare the students for the transition into 7th grade. I know you listed a bunch of like leadership opportunities and like research stuff. But are we like, I guess maybe like at those feeder middle schools where those 6th graders will be going into 7th grade, maybe like a club for them to just, have peer-on-peer, like, talks about, like, how the transition is going? Or are we doing anything or thinking about doing anything for those middle schools that will receive the sixth graders?
Thank you for the question. Yes. What we really want to do is really have the opportunity for these sixth graders to go visit said feeder schools, middle schools in their area, and also have our middle school students come down and visit with our sixth grade students, and not it be a one-time event, but really engage in them understanding what it's like to transition into seventh and eighth grade. One of the things that happens at our AVID schools in middle school is that they have a relationship with their feeder elementary schools. And so, for example, within my region, I'll just use two for example. Doolin is an AVID site, and they go down to Wright and really work with them, and over at Davidson to have them understand sort of what it takes, the time management, the organization, the note-taking skills that you have to have in order to be successful at the middle school level. And that occurs throughout the academic year. And so we would really plan on making sure that that is happening between our feeder schools of middle school and our elementary schools.
Okay, great. And are we going to like kind of track each of these students and their families once they move on to a middle school to like assess how that transition was?
No, I think that's a great idea, and I think that's something we as a committee can put into place. Absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Anyone else? Ms. Lunaros.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. Really appreciate the in-depth presentation. Two quick questions. My first one is, I know obviously it's a pilot program, but was there any other programs around that is comparable to this, or is this something that we're going to be leading the way on?
Yeah, I would say it was really us coming together as a committee and really bouncing ideas off of one another on how we could really make this work, understanding the elementary model and understanding the middle school model, and really just building this presentation for you and for our public. And of course, it may sound great on paper, but we'll have to adjust. We know that cohort size may matter when it comes to being able to pull off sort of having this double group of teachers. But I think we have the framework that will allow flexibility based on the student body and be able to make sure that they're gaining all of the same kind of skill sets that they're going to need at the secondary model.
Okay. And my second question, and I think we might have had this previous presentation, but humor me. How many students do we have in fifth grade right now at the pilot schools? Ballpark?
So 10, yeah. I don't necessarily know. Because each elementary school is so different with their fifth grade student body. I would say there's a few hundred for sure.
Okay.
And that's pretty conservative.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
Quick question. The committee, what was the dynamic of the individuals that make up this committee?
It was the committee of the projected sites that we believed were going to become the K-6 schools. And so they were made up of the principals that attended.
And then as far as, I know this talks about instructional format proposal. Dr. Trio, is this something that eventually will be voting on something like this, or taking recommendations?
If we expand. Yeah.
Okay.
So right now we've been authorized to operate within the 10 that you've approved. And I think it gets back to Governing Board Member Shaw's point that we're going to have establish some data points to monitor for these students as they progress to 7th and 8th grade, to be able to see if participation in this format led to better academic outcomes as well as school connectedness. We can also look at other things like participation in clubs, participation in activities, attendance, along with the academic data points.
Okay. And just one thing, I was actually fortunate last week to visit VC, and I got to go into one of the fifth grade classrooms. And I guess they're doing a really good job being the principal with the parents and telling them what's going on with this pilot program. And the teacher of the class said they introduced me and they said, who here is going to be coming back to VC in sixth grade? And I would say at least 3/4 of the classroom, raised their hand. And then she just called on a couple people, why are you coming on back? From answers like the principals, the great friends, loving teachers, they just, their family, other family members go there. And there was only one kid that said, my mom was making me. So, but it was good to see about, 75% of the kids there in that fifth grade classroom were excited to come back in the sixth grade. So it was good to see it firsthand. If there's no other questions, Richard Sanchez, thank you so much. We appreciate your presentation and your passion up on the stage. Dr. Trujillo, future meeting dates and agenda items, please.
Yeah, we're back on November 28th, post-Thanksgiving. 2 featured items. We're going to be hearing about the administration's long-awaited proposed revisions to policy JICA, which is a student dress code. The board has been asking for that now for quite some time. We're ready to present some recommendations. And then we will hear from the Substance Misuse Task Force on progress made in its assigned task of making some expenditure recommendations from the litigation funds that we've received as a result of the litigation with Jewel. So just a couple of the featured items we'll see in a few weeks.
Thank you very much for everybody, and we will adjourn this meeting. Thank you.